everyone, I'm Alli and welcome to my channel. Today I'm teaching you how to weave using a loom I found at IKEA. Now I learned about this loom from Drew over at Lone Fox. He did an IKEA hacks video where he used this and I knew I needed it for myself. It's actually from the children's section, so it's technically a toy and it comes with this bright polyester type fabric. I am not going to be using this for this tutorial. I will be using yarn, and here is all of the different pieces that this kit comes with. So the first thing you need to do is wrap the warp strings. Those are the vertical ones that you will move your yarn in between. Now the IKEA kit came with this gold thread, which is completely unideal, and I wish I would have known that it was gold because I would have bought alternate thread, but luckily I had some cotton thread on hand. You just want to make sure you use something with no stretch. And all I did was tie a knot at the top and then looped my string up and down vertically to create the warp, just as the instructions in the IKEA pamphlet told me. Once I finished wrapping the warp strings, I just tied a knot at the end, and then I finished assembling the loom. And here it all is, ready to start weaving. I picked up a wide variety of different yarns of different thicknesses and types. I have some chunky yarn, some regular yarn. I also have some wool roving, and I also did some neutral colors along with pops of blue. Before you can start weaving, you do need to make sure you leave some room on the bottom of the loom. So I cut up some paper and folded it a little bit and then stuck it in to the bottom, just weaving it in and out between each of the warp strings. After that, I also took a ruler and did the exact same thing. This is going to help you be able to weave a little bit easier in one direction. You could use a ruler, you could use a painter stick, or you could use really anything that's going to weave in and out that is pretty sturdy. The first thing to do is to make the footer. You're going to want to do at least 8 to 12 rows of the footer using the exact same string that you use to warp the loom. And all I did was take the shuttle, I believe that's what this is called, this needle looking thing, and I weaved it in and out between each of the strings. So all you do is go over, under, over, under, over, under, all the way across the entire loom. And then on the way back, make sure you're doing the opposite. So if you went over one string, make sure that you go under that string instead. Also, when weaving, you don't want to make any knots or knot any of the tails. You're just going to leave them hanging in the back of the weaving until everything is complete. With my footer done, I am now moving on to the actual weaving. At this point, you can create fringe at the bottom of the tapestry with raya knots, but I decided to move right into weaving the tapestry because I'm going to be using this for an IKEA hack video that's coming out later this week, and you'll get to see exactly how I used this weaving to create a beautiful decor piece. Once I got a couple rows of those done, I decided to just kind of stack it a little bit. So as you can see here, I'm not going completely across with the yarn now. Instead, I'm kind of building up a little mountain with the yarn. And all you have to do is just, instead of going all the way across, just skip the strings you don't want to wrap it around and just go back and forth. Pretty easy to build organic shapes like this. You just move back and forth and just only wrap the yarn around the different warp strings that you want it wrapped around. When you want to switch yarns, you want to make sure you also weave that yarn in with the yarn next to it, otherwise you'll create holes in the tapestry. So I am using this chunky cream yarn and I lifted up a couple rows of the yarn next to it and strung my chunky yarn through. And again, I did a little bit of a plain weave back and forth to fill in this section. Next, I'm going to show you how to do a sumac weave. I'm taking 2 pieces of this chunky blue yarn. You don't have to use 2, I just chose to do so. And then all you do is take the yarn and wrap it around the next warp string, making sure to cross the ends over the top. Now, to give the sumac weave a braided look, taking the other end of the yarn that you see here, instead of wrapping it over, you want to wrap it underneath the warp string. So you can see it here, you're almost kind of making a D shape and wrapping the yarn through the curve of the D, if that makes sense. The next weave I'm going to show you is pile weave, which creates this really cute looped texture. The first thing you have to do is go back and forth with some basic regular weave in the area that you're going to want to fill with the looped pile. Now, it's kind of tricky to get this started, so my hands are in the way in the shot here, but as you'll see in this clip, what you do is you take a dowel and you take your yarn, you wrap it down and around the dowel like so, and then you wrap it around the warp string next to it and through. And then you just repeat that all the way down the dowel, holding that dowel in place until you complete the entire row. And then before removing the dowel, make sure you go back with a normal plain weave to lock it into place. And again, what you do is you take the yarn, you wrap it down, under, and up around the dowel, and then through the next warp string. And repeating that all the way down, using that dowel to make sure your pile has a nice, even texture. And then lock it into place with a regular weave. Once you get your pile how high you want it, you want to do a couple rows of plain weave back and forth to lock and hold the entire thing in place. I do find this type of weave is a bit fragile, so you do want to be gentle with it. Now, if you want to make a really fun, chunky texture, I recommend using wool roving, and that's just basically unspun wool or whatever it's made out of, because they do have acrylic versions. And I'm doing another sumac weave with this, and instead of weaving with the next warp string in line, because this is so chunky, you actually want to go at least every other warp string. That way your braid looks nice and full. And here is what it looks like so far. While I am filling out the rest of my weaving here, I do want to talk a little bit about this loom, since it is an IKEA kids toy and I figure it's worth a little review. I actually really enjoyed working with this loom. I think it was really great for this being a beginner project. I chose to space out my warp for the wider spacing that the IKEA instructions had, but you can also space them even closer together, so this is incredibly versatile. I looked up other looms on Amazon and they were way more expensive than what I paid here for this IKEA loom, and I think it works just as well. And of course, when you're making your weaving, you do want to keep in mind kind of the overall result of it. I made sure I used a wide variety of different types of yarns, as well as did a mixture of different techniques with each yarn to really create some texture and variety. So it's a new day. I finished up my weaving last night and now I am putting in the header on the weaving, and you want to do this exactly how you did the footer. And when you are doing your weaving, you do want to make sure you do not fill the yarn all the way up to the top of the loom, because then you'll run into a problem when it's time to remove it from the loom. So as you'll see here, I'll leave quite a bit of space at the top, and I would even say leave a little bit more, because I don't even think that was quite enough space. And now it is time to clean up the back. So as I said at the beginning, you don't want to knot anything. Instead, you want to take a yarn needle and begin weaving in the tails of the yarn to the back of the tapestry. And you want to make sure that you don't poke the tails through the front and just keep it right in the back. And this just really cleans it up and prevents your tapestry from falling apart. Now it's time to remove the tapestry from the loom. So what you do is snip the first warp string and then you tie it around the string next to it, and then you want to repeat that all the way down the entire weaving, taking that string and tying it around the one next to it, and then taking the next string and tying it around the one next to it until it's all the way across. Now there's a number of different ways you can finish this weaving with these strings. I'll link you some videos down below. I didn't really care too much because of what I'm going to be using this project for, but there are ways to make it look a lot prettier instead of these rows of knots. I removed the weaving from the loom and repeated the same steps for the bottom strings. And here is what the weaving looks like off the loom. I think it turned out so beautifully. Look at those lovely stitches, that texture, all of those yarns. It just looks so great. And like I mentioned, this is part of an IKEA hacks video that will be coming out soon. I'll be sure to link it once it's out. And I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!